Jaya Radha Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Veeravardhari Yashoda Nandana Brajadana Jamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashoda Nandana Brajadana Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivrajakacarya Stottarishata Sri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Gita Jayanti ki Jai Gaur All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by Srila Prabhupada, Canto 4, Chapter 25, Text 21. Panchashir Shahina Guptam Panchashir Shahina Guptam Pratiharena Sarvataha Pratiharena Sarvataha Anvishamanam Rishabham
Anveshamanam Rishabam
Aprodham Kamarupinim
Aprodam Kamarupinim
Panchashirshahina Guptam
Panchashirshahina Guptam
Pratiharena Sarvataha
Pratiharena Sarvataha
Anveshamanam Rishabham
Anveshamanam Rishabam
Aprodham Kamarupinim
Aprodam Kamarupinim
Panchashirshahina Guptam
Panchashirshahina Guptam
Pratiharena Sarvataha
Pratiharena Sarvataha
Anveshamanam Rishabham
Anveshamanam Rishabam
Aprodham Kamarupinim
Aprodam Kamarupinim Panchashirshahina Guptam
Panchashirshahina Guptam
Pratiharena Sarvataha
Pratiharena Sarvataha
Anveshamanam Rishabam
Anveshamanam
Aprodam Kamarupinim
Aprodam Kamarupinim
Panchashirshahina Guptam
Panchashirshahina Guptam
Pratiharena Sarvataha
Pratiharena Sarvataha
Anveshamanam Rishabam
Anveshamanam Rishabam
Aprodham
Aprodam Kamarupinim
Panchashirshahina Guptam
Panchashirshahina Guptam
Pratiharena Sarvataha
Pratiharena Sarvataha
Anveshamanam Guptam
Anveshamanam Rishabam
Aprodam
Aprodam
Kamarupinim
Kamarupinim
Panchashirshahina Guptam
Panchashirshahina Guptam
Pratiharena Sarvataha
Pratiharena Sarvataha
Anveshamanam Rishabham
Anveshamanam Rishabam
Aprodham Kamarupinim
Aprodam Kamarupinim
Anyone else? Word for word. Pancha,
Pancha
5.
Five
Shirsha,
Sirsha
heads.
Heads
Ahina,
Ahina
by a snake.
Snake
Guptam,
Guptam
protected.
Protected
Pratiharena,
Pratiharena
by a bodyguard.
by a bodyguard
Sarvataha,
Sarvataha
all around.
all around
Anveshamanam,
Anveshamanam
one who is searching after.
one who is searching after
Rishabham,
Rishabam
a husband. Aprodham,
Aprodam
not very old.
not very old
Kamarupinim,
Kamarupinim
very attractive to fulfill lusty desires.
very attractive to fulfill lusty desires.
Translation: the woman was protected on all sides by a 5-hooded snake. She was very beautiful and young, and she appeared very anxious to find a suitable husband. Please repeat. The woman was protected on all sides
The woman was protected on all sides
by a 5-hooded snake.
by a 5-footed snake.
She was very beautiful and young,
She was very beautiful and young,
and she appeared very anxious
And she appeared very anxious
to find a suitable husband.
to find a suitable husband.
Srila Prabhupada's purport: the vital force of a living entity includes the 5 kinds of air working within the body, which are known as prana, apana, vyana, samana, and udana. The vital force is compared to a serpent. It can live simply by drinking air. I never knew that, did you? The vital force carried by the air is described as the pratihara, or the bodyguard. Without the vital force, one cannot live for a moment. Indeed, all the senses are working under the protection of the vital force. The woman who represents intelligence was searching after a husband. This indicates that intelligence cannot act without consciousness. A beautiful woman is useless unless protected by the proper husband. Intelligence must always be very fresh. Therefore, the word aprodham, very young, is used here. It's funny, in the word for word Prabhupada said, not very old, right? Yeah, but in the purport he says very young. Is used here. Material enjoyment means utilizing the intelligence for the sake of rupa, rasa, gandha, shabda, and sparsha, or form, taste, smell, sound, and touch. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnana Anjana Shalakaya Chakshurundritam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master is kindly opening my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Does everybody's nose run more in the winter like mine? Especially as we get old, the gates just, the valves loosen or something. Yeah, yeah. More maintenance. Okay, so Panchashirshahina Guptam. So, first of all, we hear from Narada Muni, who's telling this allegory to Prachani Bharhisha, that the woman who represents intelligence was protected on all sides by a five-footed snake. It's interesting that the snake, I was looking up snake, it's a symbol for so many things. It's right in modern medicine. There's a serpent in the emblem for modern medicine. And also, well, we know from Vedic literature that Anantashesh is a serpent. And the Buddha is sitting in many pictures on a coiled serpent, protecting Buddha, or Buddha's Saktavesha avatar, but still there's a serpent protecting him. So Pratiharena Sarvataha. Ashram Maharaj, shared with me that file I have that he had, where you have, it's the Bhagavatam, but you have also it's Prabhupada's Bhagavatam, but then you also have the commentary of Vishwanath. So according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the intelligence was protected by a doorkeeper, and yeah, it's in the word for word it says Pratiharena, by a bodyguard, with 5 heads, which he says represent the 5 functions of prana. There's prana, the life air, or the Chinese call it chi, right? So, so she was protected. So what was she doing? What is it? Anvisheshamanam Rishabam. She was looking for a husband. Yeah. And how was she able to even do that? Because the woman in the allegory, she represents material intelligence. So it's materialistic buddhi, which is a subtle material element. How was she able to do that? Aprodham kama rupinim. Well, she was able to do it. She was qualified to do it because she was very beautiful and young. And that's how it goes in the material world. Usually people are looking for mates in their youth when we look the best. And then reveals the true nature of this body remember in Mayapur, wow, this was some years ago now, maybe 2014. I had a good friend in Sharanagati, his name was Madan Mohan. And he married a South Indian after his, when I met him, he was just, oh no, she was already with him. Anyway, he was married before, but then and then she just ran off with somebody. So he was determined. This is an example of how the best laid plans. So he married a nice girl named Gita. Speaking of the Bhagavad Gita today. And she was from Bangalore. Sweet as pie. Just a real, I thought, okay. I said, you really hit the jackpot. He said, yeah, I was determined. I'm going to marry an Indian girl. She'd be faithful, not like these Western. I mean, the first one just ran off with somebody, I don't know. So, so anyway, so Gita, I met them in 93 in South India. And then I met them later in Mayapur because they got in a place in Mayapur. I was living, anybody here know the layout of Mayapur housing? No, you don't. Okay, so anyway. So they were living a little ways away. Anyway, one morning at the announcements, just like we have a little announcement and discussion after Mangalarti, they do in Mayapur too. So it was, Samba, a British lad. He was doing announcements then, and he said, Madan Mohan has requested that everyone come to his apartment because his wife appears to be passing away. She was young. He was like, I don't know how old she was. I don't think she was even 40. And they had a little girl, real nice girl. I forget her name. Anyway. But by the time I got there, she had already passed away. But she was still there. They wanted, Madan, I walked in and Madan was devastated. And then he said, Suresvara, just please take last darshan of Gita. Of course, she had already left, but she had just left. So there was no smell yet or anything. She was just there. But it was different because the life force had left. I think what did I do? I think I touched her head or her feet or something, but it was obvious that she was not there anymore. Yeah. So she was very beautiful. So we appear to be very beautiful and young, but if I'm not me, I'm not very beautiful. I'm old. Is anybody young here? Yeah. Uh-oh. Well, you're relatively young. You're younger. Anyway, if suddenly you left this world while you're sitting on the chair, and Gita was in the chair, she was sitting on like a sofa or something, and he just left her as she was. She had been feeling sick, but she just left, Anyway, if you suddenly left this world, what would happen to that younger looking body? Yeah, but I mean, immediately, I think that body's only able to sit on the chair because you're in it. It would topple. And, and probably we'd be reluctant to touch that body because it's all of a sudden it's a corpse. Ah! But that's what it always is. It just appears to be, talking and laughing and eating, and because we're inside it. Yeah. So as soon as we leave, my Prabhupada would say this so much, why don't you love a dead body? Because the person you're loving is not there anymore. And then you finally realize so-and-so is gone. I mean, you've never seen the person, you've just seen the body. You thought the person was the body. So she appeared to be very beautiful and young. Now in his purport, Prabhupada refers to 5 kinds of air within the body. But in the Bhagavad Gita 427 purport, Prabhupada refers to 10 kinds of air encircling the soul. Let's read that. It's really good, actually. You'll get a little deeper look at this air thing. 10 kinds of air. It's in Transcendental Knowledge, chapter 4, text 27. Krishna's talking about the different kinds of sacrifice. Others who are interested in achieving self-realization through control of the mind and senses offer the functions of all the senses and of the life breath as oblations into the fire of the controlled mind. And then in his purport, Prabhupada starts talking about the yoga system and how the Patanjali yogis, how they try to elevate themselves through control of these airs. Purport, in the yoga system conceived by Patanjali, which is a bona fide yoga system, but it's just not practical for our age, is referred to herein. In the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, the soul is called Pratyag Atma, or Parag Atma. As long as the soul is attached to sense enjoyment, it is called Parag Atma. But as soon as the same soul becomes detached from such sense enjoyment, it is called Pratyag Atma. The soul is subjected to the functions of, here it is, 10 kinds of air at work within the body. And this is perceived through the breathing system. So there's different, we breathe in, but then within this internal, we breathe in externally air, but then within the body, that air acts in 5 gross and 5 subtle ways. In the 15th chapter, Krishna says, he is the air of life by which he digests the 4 kinds of foodstuffs. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva. The Patanjali system of yoga instructs one on how to control the functions of the body's air in a technical manner. So it's a mechanical yoga system. So that ultimately all the functions of the air within become favorable for purifying the soul of material attachment. So it's a very arduous and technical and difficult process. According to this yoga system, Pratyag Atma is the ultimate goal. So to detach ourselves, or to withdraw ourselves from the sense objects. Now, bhakti is much easier, as Prabhupada will say. This Pratyag Atma is withdrawn from activities in matter. The senses interact with the sense objects, like the ear for hearing, eyes for seeing, nose for smelling, tongue for tasting, hand for touching, and all of them are thus engaged in activities outside the self. They are called the functions of the prana vayu. The apana vayu, so the prana goes upward. So the whole Patanjali system is to try to raise the life airs upward, and ultimately you see the Brahmarandra, how the yogi bursts out like you have on that painting, bursts out the top of the skull. The apana vayu goes downwards, or if you're sinful, then you go down and you leave out the rectum. No good. The apana vayu goes downwards. Vyana vayu acts to shrink and expand. Samana vayu adjusts equals. Prabhupada's giving a little sample of what all these different airs do. Samana vayu adjusts equilibrium. Udana vayu goes upwards. And when one is enlightened, one engages all these in searching for self-realization. So just a little more. There's a bunch of places where Prabhupada talks about that too. Okay. Now Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport that the woman, or intelligence, was seeking a husband, and the husband represents consciousness, because intelligence cannot act without consciousness, right? Prabhupada, he would give the example of Einstein. So if you can create life from chemicals, Mr. Scientist, why don't you give the right chemical? Because Mr. Einstein had a very good brain. You know, Einstein, he was contemporary. Well, he was older than Prabhupada, actually. But so Prabhupada gave him an example a lot because he started coming to prominence in the 20s, you know. So Prabhupada would refer to him a lot. So because intelligence cannot act without consciousness. Furthermore, intelligence must always be, what does Prabhupada say here? This is very interesting because he says, she's not very old, she's young. Prabhupada says, intelligence must always be very fresh. Therefore, the word aprodham, very young, is used here. So, for example, now they're doing a lot of research in, you know, debilitating diseases, cognitive diseases, you know, like dementia, and Alzheimer's, and so they're trying to find the, you know, the silver bullet that's going to wipe away all this plaque on the brain that's causing forgetfulness, and, people just not being able to function. But they don't know that the person isn't that. The person really is the soul. Therefore, you know, Prabhupada, as I think I mentioned maybe in the last class, even he's on his disappearance bed, and he's not only aloof from the act, you know, what's going on in his gross body, which is like Kaviraj said, look, he's just skin and bone. An ordinary man would be screaming in pain. There's nothing there. The skin, you know, just on the nerves on the bone. But he's also dictating these very sophisticated purports, even though you can hardly hear him. So he, you know, when Prabhupada agreed it, in October, they're begging, devotees are begging him to stay, and Prabhupada said, all right. So he just drinks a little, or he has a strawberry or something. And so he's totally baffling the Kaviraj, who's all about, you know, they can tell what's going on subtly with the airs and just by the pulse, if they're really good. And so he just, and at different times he would say, he practically didn't detect a pulse. I don't know how you're living, Swamiji. And then sometimes he'd feel, and it was like the pulse of a young man. He's saying, you can do any of these. You can control all of this. You're like a mystic yogi. You're beyond these medicines. What's the use of these medicines? And Prabhupada said, yes. The real medicine is hearing about Krishna. And he would quote, the real medicine, Bhagavatam, is hearing about Krishna in Parampara. That was a Parikshit Maharaj verse. So, but materially, we're very, you know, we're attached to matter by our desires. So we've given our consciousness over to matter. So we are very affected by material conditions. So intelligence cannot act without consciousness. Further, intelligence must always be, very fresh. So we're, you know, like, you know, we take supplements and to try to help. So what is it, Gotu Cola? You ever take Gotu Cola for memory? Oh, Ginkgo biloba. What's Gotu Cola?
Same thing.
Same thing? From the Orient. Yeah, I remember that. They were marketed as that. And there's Ayurvedic stuff that's similar. Oh, Brahma Rasayan. Yeah. So, so what is consciousness anyway? They don't even, it's like, it's called just, people just, you know, materialists just think it comes from a mature stage of chemicals, and there's consciousness. But like the whole debate about abortion. When is the fetus viable? They say. When can it actually leave the? When can actually it's a person, right? When is the fetus viable? Well, the fetus, because they don't know what life is, that life has no beginning and no end. The soul is always there. The soul isn't just, staunch Christians will say, right at conception. And of course, people who are usually pro-abort or choice, they want to say, no, it's not even a person yet. Because they think it's still growing. And then at some point, the consciousness will manifest when the matter has reached a certain mature state. But we say, no, it's not that life begins at conception. Life is always there. Life is eternal. Life is forever, has no beginning and no end. So, and what is consciousness? Gita 2:17, verse and purport says, consciousness is the energy of the soul. This is our best evidence from Krishna about what consciousness is. Chapter 2, text 17. Avinashi tu tadvidhi yena sarvam midam katam. Vinasham avyayasya nakaschit kartamarhati. That which pervades the entire body, you should know to be indestructible. Indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. So consciousness is simply the energy of the soul. That's what consciousness is. Nothing to do with chemicals. I'm just going to read different sections of the purport. This verse more clearly explains the real nature of the soul, which is spread all over the body. Anyone can understand what is spread all over the body. It is consciousness. Everyone is conscious of the pains and pleasures of the body, in part or as a whole. Okay, I wanted to mention that. And then, therefore, the individual particle of spirit soul is a spiritual atom. Don't think protons, electrons, and neutrons. It's a spiritual atom. It's atomic. It's infinitesimal. That's what atom means here. Smaller than the material atoms. And such atoms are innumerable. They're everywhere. Everywhere. There's atoms everywhere. And the super soul is everywhere too. This very small spiritual spark is the basic principle of the material body. Matter grows in the womb or outside the womb on the basis of spirit. If a baby is stillborn, that means the soul left before it was born, or maybe at birth. And the influence of such a spiritual spark is spread all over the body as the influence of the active principle, of the material body. And the influence of such a spiritual spark is spread all over the body, just as the influence of the active principle of some medicine spreads throughout the body. Oh yeah, okay. And then Prabhupada quotes the Mundaka Upanishad, Sanskrit, English quote. The soul is atomic in size and can be perceived by perfect intelligence. Or in the Gita, Prabhupada says, any reasonable person can consider that he's the same person he was when he was a baby and a young person and a lower. It's the same person. You're just witnessing changes of gross and subtle matter, but you're the same person. This atomic soul is floating in the 5 kinds of air, prana, apana, vyana, samana, and udana, is situated within the heart, that's where we live, and spreads its influence all over the body of the living entities. When the soul is purified from the contamination of the 5 kinds of material air, its spiritual influence is exhibited. Okay, so there's a little segue into the next. Now, Vishwanath, next part, I want to, in Vishwanath's commentary to the verse, he says, just as she, the material intelligence, attracted a husband, attracted a soul who wanted to enjoy in the material world. So therefore, we're outfitted with a certain kind of intelligence and body, and depending on what we deserve from our karma. Just as she attracted a husband, she, the intelligence, attracted. The intelligence with ignorance attracts a jiva. So when we're jiva souls, we're tiny souls. But when we're really covered by ignorance, when we're ignoring Krishna, then we get a material intent. And to do what? To try to enjoy the sense objects. And then further, Vishwanath says, she was always wearing various ornaments. That was the way he translated. Prabhupada in the verse, the last two words are Kaba Rupinim, very attractive to fulfill lusty desires. So Vishwanath goes a little deeper on that. He says, she was always wearing various ornaments. So the lady is ornamented with different attractive features. In the human form, the lady is the more attractive, right? In the cage, the male is more attractive. So this means that she was filled with various, listen to this, various impressions. Now I took that, the only way I could make sense of that, I infer that she created impressions of enjoyment in the mind of the husband Jiva. She created various impressions. She created impressions of enjoyment, yeah. Because Vishwanath says she was filled with various features which created various impressions in the mind of the conditioned jiva who wants to enjoy matter. So she sees the sense object of, what is it? Rupa, yeah, Rupa. So there's Rupa, Gandha, Rupa, form, Gandha, smell, Rasa, taste, Shabda, hearing. What's the other one? There's 5. Anyway, forgot one. Yeah. So as we interact with sense objects, form, taste, sound, smell, touch, for sense gratification, a devotee, he interacts with the sense objects, but in devotional service. When we're mature, we're no longer trying to squeeze pleasure out of the sense objects, but we see them as all as paraphernalia for service. And that's why in the RT we offer the smell, we offer the flame, etc., like that. So, okay. I'll read the verse again if you have any questions or comments on this Ekadashi day. Oh, one thing about, I'll relate Shabda is the object, is hearing, is the sound, actually sense object of sound. Shrotra is the hearing process. So, Prabhupada, when my God-sister Rukmini was initiated in Montreal on August 15, 1968, and then a few days later, she was hearing a Bhagavatam class from Prabhupada. And then she said, when you're not here, I feel very lonely. So Prabhupada, he said, oh, that you should not think. And then without saying Vani and Vapu, he just went into, he said there are 2 conceptions of the spiritual master, physical and vibration. And then he said, just like, and then he went right into the Bhagavad Gita. He said, just like, although Krishna was only manifest to everyone 5,000 years ago, although even though he was manifest, most people didn't accept him as God. It's only the Pandavas and, some great devotees.
Even when they saw his universal form.
Yeah, Duryodhana, exactly. So then he said, but as soon as we open Bhagavad Gita and we hear Krishna speak, immediately we are in touch with Krishna. And the same he said with the spiritual master, if we hear the spiritual master's words, that's the real association. Not by seeing, but by hearing. We see through the ears, actually, in spiritual life. So he was saying that. So Krishna's immediately, it's just like, he said, it's just the same as being on the chariot with Krishna. You don't have to lament that you weren't there 5,000 plus years ago at Jyotisar, at Kurukshetra, to hear Bhagavad Gita. No, you just opened up the Gita, because Vyas was kind enough to insert it in the Mahabharata, and you can associate with Krishna. It's not different. It's the same. So he said it's the same. Don't think that you're lonely. Don't be lonely if you can't see me physically. Just listen to the instructions. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. Okay, the verse today was, the woman was protected on all sides by a 5-footed snake. She was very beautiful and young, and she appeared very anxious to find a suitable husband. Questions?
Trying to make sure I'm getting this metaphor right. So the woman, she's the intelligence, yes?
Uh-huh. Material intelligence.
The material intelligence, right. And the husband she's anxious to find is the sense objects, yes?
Yeah, he wants to enjoy.
Yeah. And then,
Jana, he wants to enjoy it, but he needs intelligence to do that.
and then the 5-footed snake, is that the senses?
The 5-footed snake, oops, I'm gonna go back to the text, is the bodyguard. Is the soul proper, but and the soul is, I couldn't quite determine, because if you read the verse in purport and also Vishwanath's commentary, the life force, it's all connected with prana too, with these airs. So it's floating in these airs, as Prabhupada writes. It's floating in the different kinds of airs. So what was your question again?
Just what is if the
soul
husband
is,
that she's looking for represents objects, is the 5-footed snake like the senses, the eyes, the ears, the nose, mouth?
well, it says she was the bodyguard, and the bodyguard is the vital force. Yeah, the vital force is compared to a serpent. It's the consciousness. It's the energy of the soul. Yeah. That's what I forgot that piece.
Okay.
It's the energy of the soul, the consciousness. Yeah, it's pretty technical stuff. But it's even more technical in the third canto. Then you really get into it with Kapila Dev. Wow. But the main thing for us is aspiring bhakti yogis, sadhakas, is that we're have to change. Let's see, what's that? Mr. John Maharaj. He once asked Prabhupada, is seeing Krishna everywhere, is that an inference or a vision? Is it something you deduce intellectually, or is it some mystical? And you know what Prabhupada said? He said, it is a fact. It is a fact, because that's how he's experiencing life. And Kaviraj Goswami also says, stavara jangama. We might appear to be seeing stavara, things that are non-moving, like trees, and jangama, things that are moving. But whatever a pure devotee sees, whether it's moving or unmoving, he's seeing Krishna, because he's seeing it's Krishna's energy, belongs to Krishna. So if I'm in good consciousness, if I'm not in the consciousness of, what is your old email address again? Latin lover, poor Vita. Okay, love for Krishna, that's good. But if I'm seeing, if I'm seeing a nice ladies, if I'm seeing properly, I'm not seeing them for me. I'm not seeing as prey, P-R-E-Y, not P-R-A-Y. I'm not seeing them as prey for my predatory consciousness of trying to enjoy the material world. I'm seeing them as Krishna's gopis. Sometimes Prabhupada would say I know he wrote a letter to Sankarshan, my godbrother. Yeah, it's okay if you all the girls on campus at UF. He wrote this from when we first met when we were young brahmacharis. Yeah, you can, preach to all them, but just see them as Krishna's gopis. Don't see them for you. It might just be, theoretical at first because you got the residue of desire. But the more you follow the process, the more you'll see, you belong to Krishna. And I belong to Krishna. So we're all servants of Krishna. Very happy. Okay.
We've been reading this 7th canto about Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad. I didn't remember reading this before, but when Hiranyakashipu said, where is your Krishna? Where is he in this pillar? And Prahlad, actually, it said that he saw Krishna or Lord Nrsimhadev. He saw him in the pillar, and he goes, "Yes, he is."
Nrsimhadev peeped over and said,
"Yes, yeah, right."
And he's about to show himself in another way, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then it goes on that he becomes like enlightened and really purified. And I'm thinking, wow, even more so,
Yeah, he's our hero. Anything else? Okay, I guess that's all. Okay, Gita Jayanti, Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Hari Bol.